We want to talk about what the last couple weeks could mean about the rest of the summer. So a question we've gotten a lot over the last couple days is this normal to have this much rain? Is the whole summer going to be rainy? And so kind of pulled the statistics on all this. Just kind of want to walk through some things. So let me pull that up. There you go. We're kind of going to go through the rainfall for Tyler, Longview, and Lufkin, and I'm going to kind of make some notes, and then this is going to be attached to an article that I've put together with some more in-depth information. And if you're watching this live, that article is not available, but this is going to be attached to that article. So maybe you're watching it after this happened live. The information will be below this video. So rainfall statistics for starting off with Tyler. Month to date, season to date, we are ahead. Those numbers are the same because June is the first month of meteorological spring. So we only have the June data for the season to date. But you also notice year to date, we are ahead on rainfall compared to what would be considered normal. Same thing for Longview, head month and season and year to date, and in Lufkin at the Angelina County Airport, month, season, year to date, we are ahead in all of those places. Now, generally speaking, over the last 30 years, we average just under 6 inches of rain for May through early June. This year, we've had over 9 inches. Last year, we had over 9 inches. So the last couple years, we've been in something called northwest flow for the early part of the summer, and that's what brings us these days and days of rain, showers, and thunderstorms. Last couple years, we had a lot of severe weather. First part of June, late May. This year, we've had some severe weather, but not as much as we had last year. All of the rain that we've had has been very beneficial. We are not in drought, thankfully. We don't always get to say that going into early summer. So good news, we are not in drought. But what does this rainy pattern maybe mean for the rest of the summer? So I've kind of pulled some information. I've based the data off of Tyler pounds. It takes a lot of time to run all of these numbers, and then to run it for all three of the climate sites would take even longer. But you can apply these takeaways from the Tyler area to Longview and Lufkin, the entire viewing area. This really wouldn't change all that much. The specific numbers would change, but the overall conclusions would not change all that much. So over the last 30 years, we average 5.8 inches of rain from May the 1st to June the 10th. And that would be the last month of spring and the first part of summer, first part of June. Meteorological summer would be June, July, and August, the entire months encompassing. So we averaged about 5.8 inches of rain over the last 30 years. On average, there are about 42 95-degree or warmer days over the course of the summer, and the first 95-degree day occurred on average around June the 15th. Now, that's just the average, the wet years, the dry years. We can then take a look at, okay, let's look at the years that were drier compared to average and the years that were wetter compared to average. So the years where we had rainfall that was less than 5.8 inches of rain, we had 48 days where we were at 95 degrees or hotter over the summer. And I use 95, that's kind of the internal temperature threshold we say for when it's going to be hot. But upper 90s, triple digits, there were 48 on average days where we were in the upper 90s and triple digits in those drier years. And the average first quote-unquote hot day wasn't until June the 9th. So it was 6 days earlier than what was the average over the total of those 30 years. Now, the wetter years, this year is a wetter year. We've had over 9 inches of rain through May and early June. The average number of hot days was 33, so lower than the average and obviously lower than those drier years. And then the average first hot day was not until June the 24th, so 9 days after the average, and we'll say 2-ish weeks later than the average for the dry year. So here's some conclusions that I'm going to make. This is not to say this is what is going to happen for sure, but the climatology, the averages, the statistics tell me that there's some things that look likely to me. We're probably not going to see a day where we're in the upper 90s until late June, and we're probably not going to see as many upper 90s and triple digits over the entire course of the summer because there's been so much rain through May into early June, and that's due to a process called evaporative cooling. Think of it this way. All this rain is in the ground. it's going to evaporate. The heat is going to cause that water to turn into water vapor and evaporate out of the ground. That process is a cooling process. The phase change from liquid groundwater to water vapor in the atmosphere is a phase change that causes cooling. Now, it means there will be higher humidity. We'll probably have higher heat indices, but the actual temperature will be lower because of that evaporative cooling process. It's kind of complicated meteorology stuff. If you're interested in learning more about that, of course, I can send you some information, but for general purposes, just take my word for it. Evaporation is a cooling process. As that water in the ground evaporates, it's going to help keep our air temperature lower, but probably increase the humidity. So I told Hannah that she would be kind of the person to throw some questions my way, and hopefully those are questions that you all at home may have. But Hannah, what do you got for me?
Well, I was just going back to your graphic, and I'm going to pull it back up here. I wanted to note that, like, the hotter days, the amount of hotter days that we have are just a few days apart. It could be a week, it could be maybe, a week and a half, and that can really have an impact on how late we see those warmer temperatures come in. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, and you know, these are average numbers. Some years there was really hardly no effect, but we don't base things off of 1 year at a time.
Right.
So there were some years where we had no 95-degree or warmer days in June. It wasn't until July or August that they happened, but the average worked out to be late June. So still later than what would be considered average overall and average for those dry years.
When I think of really hot summers, my mind automatically goes to the band kids on the field, the football kids, and the drill teams trying to get ready for the upcoming season.
Yeah.
Obviously, what we're seeing here, we're going to have the hotter days come in later, but is it going to make those hotter days more intense? I know you mentioned the heat index, what the feels like temperature, that mugginess. Is that going to be a little bit more intense since that water's still coming up?
I would say generally speaking, the heat index will be higher because there's more moisture to work with. So we've seen this, I believe it was last year that this happened, that the air temperature was not as hot as it had been in prior years, but the amount of humidity caused the heat index to be higher than it had been for several years prior. So the humidity last year was worse, but the actual temperature was lower than it had been. It's kind of weird to think about, but the more moisture coming out of the ground, the higher the humidity will be.
Okay, so hydrate, all you kiddos getting ready for the summer months, but this is definitely eye-opening because I too was wondering, you know, with wetter months, what are we going to see with the upcoming summer season? So this definitely helps clear that up.
Yeah, so I'd say overall, the last couple weeks of May, first couple weeks of June, they have been wetter than normal. Not as wet as last year was actually through this point, but been wetter than normal. And then we kind of make some prognostications, if you will, about what that may mean for the next couple of weeks and maybe the rest of the summer.
Now, this is a little far-fetched here, but does this mean that our heat is going to linger a little bit more into the fall? Or is that still hard to say?
I wouldn't venture as far to say that at this point. I'm sure I could, dig further into the numbers, but that's not something I focused on.
Okay, well, this is definitely great. And of course, we'll hear more about it over on our websites, kltv.com and ktre.com. Look for it.
See you a little later. Thank you.
Bye.